And thank you, amazing Wander team, for gathering yourselves from all over the continent, the North American continent, to be here tonight. I know there's a lot of members who are going to love to hear what it's really like in the trenches. You know, we all want to make films. We all make films, but to hear it from those of you who have been in the trenches, made an indie film, and it's a damn good one. I loved it. Yeah, before everybody entered the room, I was asking the writer, so why did this happen? Wait, tell me about this. So obviously, you know, it's a really good story, and I hope that everyone will watch it. But what I'd like to do now is introduce everyone. And maybe when I say your name, I'm first going to just say who's who, and you can raise your name, and then I'll talk a little bit about each one of you. So first we have April Mullen, the director, and Tim Doiron, writer and producer. We have James Vanderwoerd, producer and line producer. Faye Mullen, production designer. Robert Dean, production supervisor. And David Gibson, actor. So just a little bit about each person. April is the director of Wander and also the co-founder of the independent production company Wango Films, along with Wander writer Tim Doiron. Wango Films has produced 6 features to date. April is a mixed Anishinaabe director and producer from the Algonquin Nation. And her latest is Wander, which was distributed by Saban Films and Paramount in December of 2020. As some of you know, it stars Aaron Eckhart, Tommy Lee Jones, Heather Graham, Catherine Winnick, and our very own David Gibson. April is known for her bold visuals, ambitious shooting style, strong performances, and very unique voice. And she has been honored with the 2016 Berks Diamond Tribute, a tribute to women in film. She's also directed Below Her Mouth, shot by an all-female crew, the action thriller 88, and Dead Before Dawn 3D, which made her the youngest person and the first woman to direct a live action stereoscopic 3D feature film. And that film was awarded the Perron Crystal. She's also directed TV. Her credits include CBS's new season of Blood and Treasure, Netflix's Tiny Pretty Things, Lethal Weapon, The Rookie, and Winona Earp. All right, Tim, would you raise your hand again? So we can see you. Tim Doiron. Tim Doiron wrote Wander. He is a writer, producer, co-founder with April of Wango Films. As a producer, Tim has financed and put together feature films using a variety of financial structures, including soft monies, private equity, international pre-sales. He is a creative producer. He specializes in seeing a project from conception to release. Some of his credits include Rock, Paper, Scissors, The Way of the Tosser, Gravy Train, Dead Before Dawn 3D, which was the closing night film at the Toronto International Next Wave Film Festival and the winner of the prestigious Perron Crystal Award for its achievements in 3D. 88 and Far Hope Tower, which premiered at Fright Fest in London. Tim's next project is Hello Stranger, which will start shooting later this year. As a writer, Tim has received 2 Canadian Comedy Award nominations for Best Writing in a Feature, and the Canadian Screen Award for Best Writing for his work on the series Real Detective, where he served as head writer and supervising producer. Next, I'd like to introduce James Vanderwoerd, who I worked very closely with when I was at the film office. And James has, I don't know what stories he'll tell, but I will always be in awe of what he was able to do because I sat there and watched. And the fact that he was able to juggle so much and handle so many different things that just kept coming his way is remarkable. In any case, he is a well-known line producer and producer who joined Wango Films in 2011. He has many years of professional cross-border experience in film and is well-versed in managing all elements of production, from development to production through release, across a wide range of budget levels. His credits include Dead Before Dawn 3D, winner of the prestigious Perron Crystal Award '88, and Far Hope Tower. Faye Mullen is the production designer and is a helper, a web weaver, an earth worker, a writer, a facilitator, a transdisciplinary artist who also works in film. By way of their community, they navigate ongoing efforts to lift the voices of kin, bridge understandings, and honor sacred silences. Robert Dean, production supervisor, is a native of New Mexico and has worked in film for over 12 years. While he was studying and writing and directing with Mark Medoff, whom a lot of you know, he wrote Children of a Lesser God. He landed the lead role in Eaters, which was released by Lionsgate. He then jumped into every other aspect of film, including stunts, transportation, locations, assistant directing, and editing, and learned what it takes to make a film from start to finish. He produced Lionsgate Good Night, Sleep Tight, and continues to work in New Mexico, directing, production managing, and producing. He recently joined forces with Buffalo 8 to create Buffalo 8 New Mexico, which is a full service division for producers, projects, and companies looking to shoot in New Mexico. David Gibson is an actor. He's been working in film, television, and theater for more than 45 years. After spending most of his acting career in New York City, David moved to New Mexico 3 years ago. Recent television credits include Better Call Saul, FBI, Bull, The Americans, Quantico, and Billions. On the big screen, you can see him in The Human Capital, Ocean's 8, The Joker, and Wander. So I hope I've said enough to give the audience an idea of who they're dealing with here. And what, April? April is muted. Can we unmute her?
I saw another very special guest, which we have to introduce because the role of Glenda was played by Elena, who has joined us.
Oh, Elena, come on out and say hi.
A local actress from, there we go.
Thank you, April. We had so much fun. It was huge. Oh, you see, that's how you knew me, right?
Yes, it's true. So good to see you. Another local actress.
Yay. And Elena has been on the board of New Mexico Women in Film. Mm-hmm. That's how I initially met Elena.
That's right.
I see Ramona's name too.
Pardon?
I saw Ramona's name too down there.
Oh, is Ramona here? Yeah, come on in.
I didn't see it.
There she is.
Oh, there we go.
Hey, Ramona.
So good to see you.
Yay.
It's wonderful to see you, April. I was really, really looking forward to this. I've been like, April's coming, yay! I had such a great time. It was an honor working on that film, and you are an incredible director, and oh my God, I'm so glad. Female, yes, yes. So, yes.
There you go.
So good to see you. So good to see you.
Yay. All right, so I'm going to dive right in with a question that I'm sure many of our members here today will be very interested in and will benefit from, which is, can you describe, all of you, a production timeline? How did you get from page to screen? What's it really like in the trenches? So I'm going to let you all figure out the order because you know it very well, how this all happened and how you managed to pull it off.
Yeah, I think Tim's the guy for this question.
Okay,
Started
Yeah,
the
I'll start, and then everybody just jump in as we move along. Believe it or not, this would have started probably originally, obviously with I'm a writer, so script was our first thing, and April and I started first talking about this project as far back as like, 2014 or 15. Yeah, first started coming about, or maybe 2016. And let me know if I start going weird as well, because my internet's sort of wonky here. But way back when we were working on the show Real Detective, which looked at these homicide detectives. And at that time, we started talking about, wouldn't it be interesting to make a film about a homicide detective that somehow got himself wrapped up in a conspiracy theory? So the genesis of the idea started way back then. And then we started developing the feature at that point. Now, something I think April could contest to is I'm obsessed with New Mexico. Every single film I write always starts with New Mexico being the setting. And then we end up not being able to shoot the film in New Mexico for whatever reason. So from the beginning, when I started writing Wander, I was like, the guy, at this time, I was like, the guy, the homicide guy, he's gonna be in New Mexico. This film is happening in New Mexico. I don't care how, but we're shooting in Mexico. I've never been to New Mexico. I don't know why I thought like that, but we did. So, so it started way back then. And then I guess we just kept working the script up until the time that, we had something that was feeling sort of pretty good. And in about 2018, that's when I guess April and I and James, at this point, the three of us would have been having discussions about like, okay, the script's in a good place, but now we need to start, shopping it, and how are we going to finance it? And again, we've shot a lot of films in Canada. We know the system in Canada, and we have access to funding in Canada. And we were like, well, Tim, if we're going to make the film in New Mexico, how are we going to do this? We haven't worked with this model before. And then that sort of started a whole new adventure. James and April, I don't know if either one of you want to jump in at this point or just want me to keep going.
Yeah, you
no,
can take the wheel. I mean, yeah.
Okay, so in about 2018, we're like, okay, well, we're going to finance this film. It's not going to go through the Canadian system. So obviously, we're going to have to figure out a way to put it together with, private equity and that sort of thing. So at first, we started researching, and at that time, April and I were between Toronto and LA a lot, and I was in LA, and then James sort of came down, and we started working the budget and working the ideas. And then we eventually were like, okay, well, we need to bring on a good sales company that will help us, because we're going to have to put together international pre-sales in order to finance this thing. And so at that time, we reached out to Andre Rellis at VMI Worldwide, because Andre sold our film, actually, Dead Before Dawn 3D. And we've always loved Andre, and we just found like Andre's such an honest guy, and as far as like sales agents go, he's just so spot on and so hungry. And so we took the script to him, and after a long sort of back and forth, he's like, "Oh man, all right, let's do it." So we're like, "Let's do it. We're gonna do it together." So Andre came on, and we're like, "All right, here we go," and we just sort of started working from that point on. Now we're in like 2018, things are rolling, and we're like, okay, well, we need to cast up. And at first, we always pictured this as a very independent, low budget sort of film, and we were like, it was going to be something that was sort of experimental, like auteur driven, where the entire thing was going to be, you're in the main character, who ended up being played by Aaron. You were in this main character's head, and you're never really going to be able to tell what was real, what wasn't real. Supposed to be really. But then we started casting, and all of a sudden, again, I say all of a sudden, like it just happened. This took like many months, and it was extremely painful. But then all of a sudden, it got to Aaron, and Aaron loved the role. And we were like, oh my goodness, Aaron loves this role. And all of a sudden, April and I are meeting with Aaron in Beverly Hills, and he was like, I love this role. And he went on a thing, and he just talked about conspiracy for so long. We were like, oh my gosh, Aaron's perfect. And he's like, and New Mexico is the perfect place to make this. Let's make this in New Mexico. Let's go. We're doing it. Let's go. And we were like, okay. So then we went back, and James flew back down to LA. And we're like, okay, Andre, we're all like, we're going, we're good. But at that point, we never shot a film in New Mexico. We still didn't have the film financed, but we did have Aaron on board, and we knew we could probably start putting some pre-sales and stuff together. And so at this point, we started working with Andre to try, and we're like, okay, well, we're gonna have to finance this thing. So let's figure it out. So we knew that New Mexico, and this is Leslie, when we started, I think, reaching out to you and started going to New Mexico and doing some little tax credit we can take advantage of. We'll be able to utilize that and sort of make that part of our structure for our budget. You know, we're going to sort of hit certain sales and continue. And long story short, as we started to cast, all of a sudden the film started to grow in size, because all of a sudden Aaron came on board, and then Heather joined, and then Catherine Winnick joined, and we're like, oh, this isn't just a small little film that's going to be like this little like experimental indie. And all of a sudden we're working with Andre, and we're working with these international partners, and all of a sudden they're like, okay, well, this needs to be a lot more like, we need to make sure that this is going to be something that can, you know, span the world and be able to really be tangible for everybody. So the film just continued to grow and grow and grow. But we still weren't closed on our financing front. And then finally, James and I were in LA, and we're like, you know what, we need to just go full time to New Mexico. And basically, James left his home in Toronto and LA, and I left my home in LA. And we went to New Mexico, and I just basically packed all my stuff up. And then I was in New Mexico for like 6 months straight as we continued to put it together. And then early on there, April also came down to New Mexico. We were continuing to finance. We didn't have Tommy Lee Jones at this point, but as we were finding the whole place of Carrizozo and where we were going to shoot, we also got introduced to the one and only Robert Dean. And that was another moment that changed our life. And we met Robert in the small little town of Capitan at a beautiful little place called Renee's. And we were like, oh my goodness, Robert is the best. And then Robert basically joined the team at that point, and we were inseparable for how long, Robert? I mean, months and months. Jesse
months
came
and
on,
months.
and then, yeah. And then after like all that, all of a sudden, lots sort of things came together. And then we were still without Tommy, and we were like, we're shooting a film in like 2 months. At this point, Faye's now coming down to New Mexico. We're like, we still have this major role to cast. And Andre, our sales agent, he was still in LA, and we'd been talking to a bunch of people. And all of a sudden we were like doing a scout, and we had all this whole weekend where we had to do all this stuff. And all of a sudden Andre calls me, he's like, hey, Tim, what are you guys doing? Tommy Lee wants to meet you guys tomorrow. And we're like, what? And he's like, yeah. So then April and I are like, okay. And it's like it's like 8 o'clock at night. We're in Carrizozo. So we fly back to the hotel. We're like, James, we have to go to LA immediately. James is like, okay. We're like, we have to meet with Tommy Lee Jones. Drive from Carrizozo up to Albuquerque. We stay in a hotel. We get there at like 2 a.m. We stay in a hotel. We get up. We get on a plane at like 5:30 in the morning to LA. And then we go to the Beverly Hills Hotel. April and I meet. We ate pasta and talked to Tommy, and I was intimidated, and April and he joined the film. And then like a month later we were shooting, and in that time we also had Faye making signs and crazy, like wrangling every vehicle in the entire like state. And then David joined the film and was amazing, and we knew we wanted him from the beginning. And all of a sudden we're shooting the movie, and we're like, this is crazy. And it's in New Mexico, so that was amazing. I hope that wasn't too long, everyone.
No, that was a great synopsis. Two things. I know James's angle is going to be very interesting too, because I observed him. So I'm also interested in the angle of what he was juggling. But Lisa Lucas, who was also at the film office and is the president of Women in Film Now, has a question. So she really wanted to jump in and ask something. So Lisa.
Hi, you guys. How are you? So
Yeah,
happy to be here with us in New Mexico virtually. Your dream. James, I don't know if you remember me, but I remember you.
I was telling Leslie I miss you guys so much when you left.
Oh, that's really nice. Thanks. Well, my question is this. As a producer, and I know I speak for a lot of people here in New Mexico, it seems like the turning points for you in the early stages were getting the talent on board. And so, you know, there's only a few routes to go. It's like you get talent attached and that equals money if it's name brands, right? And then you can attract the financing, or you somehow can privately finance through some wealthy people with no names, or you pitch to a studio and they're like, okay, we'll finance it, but then they own most of it, right? So you went the route of true indie, of, you know, financing it yourself and owning it. And then, but what I didn't get was, how did you get to Aaron Eckhart? Like, I just want to know, did you, you know, find out his representation and just do it that way? Did you have a friend that got to him? Like, these are like the little nitty gritty things. And also Tommy Lee Jones, like, how did you actually get those scripts to those eyeballs of those actors? Because I know they get a lot of stuff, right?
Well, Tim, I think, stalked him at first, right? And then crawled up his balcony and then, no, I'm kidding.
I feel like there's one element that's been left out. And I do think it's worth stating that in the indie film scene, when you're making a film, there are so many doors that close in your face. And it does take literally every ounce of your energy and focus and dedication for a long time. The buildup, even now we're trying to get the momentum going on a new project, and the momentum is the hardest thing to start to build. And this film, I would say it was Aaron, but it wasn't, because we did have a lot of doors close in our face about the script. And it's just the sheer tenacity. And I remember it was like, we contacted the manager and constantly contacted the manager. It wasn't just like one phone call. It was probably over the span of 7 months of really calling and, you know, passionately speaking about the project and why Aaron was perfect and had to read it. And it did take a very long time to get a read from him. And we were like this close, and we're always that close to giving up. And then Aaron read the script.
Okay.
So it's almost like, I think the biggest thing, and the same thing happened then once we had Aaron, it still took so long to get everybody else on board. We were like that close to pushing, and Tim was like, I'm packing my bags, because if I don't make a move, if I don't do action right now and leave, and I don't go to New Mexico to believe in this film, it's not going to happen. And James and I were like, okay, we're on board. And there we all are in, we're there, and it's all out of pocket, and it's terrifying, and you don't know if there is a film or isn't a film, but it's like the sheer tenacity of believing in the end goal. Sometimes that's what gets you through, and the momentum comes from so many different ways, whether it be an actor or, like you were saying, a financer. But it really is the amount of dedication you really dedicate and stay focused to one project. And it could be for 5 years in the making, like Wander was. It was a 5-year journey before we hit the momentum.
And that's like normal. Like, it doesn't just happen in 6 months, or, it is so hard to do what you've done. And I think I'm so happy that you're here telling the story, because I think you're going to inspire many, many New Mexico filmmakers that are where you were then right now. And they are just hitting roadblocks, and they need the inspiration, and they need to be, told, don't give up, and so keep going. But I want to know about Tommy Lee.
Yeah.
How did you get him?
He was with the same agency as Aaron. So once he also it's really important that once you get a door open, that you really take advantage of that door as much as you can. So once we got a yes from Aaron, it was like, who else within this agency makes the right, makes a fit or makes sense. And we sort of went with in-house routes, which make things a lot easier, because then everybody knows about the project, they know Aaron's involved. And so it's a lot easier than trying to start something, at another agency. So we stayed in-house. So once you get a yes, or if you get interest, or there's an agent that actually likes the script, constantly focus on them, and that will help you.
Once someone's attached, they're interested in stacking stacking the film because they want everyone to do well on it.
I remember how happy you were, and we were so stoked for you.
Yeah.
Tommy Lee. We were like, okay, they're making the movie.
Yeah.
Did you
No, it
guys
was crazy,
know?
but I mean, like you guys will remember the first time. I remember Tim and I were actually golfing in LA at the time, and I called you. I called you to just ask a question about the tax incentive, and I remember we spoke, and I got off the phone, and Tim and I just started talking. We were like, you know what? We need to just go to New Mexico and feel this out. And Tim, for some reason, like it just timed out conveniently that Tim was actually on his way out. He was moving out of this place that he was in, and he was like in a transition. And so we literally put Tim's stuff in a storage unit, and we went to New Mexico intending to go for like a weekend. And we were there, and we just started like driving around and scouting, and I talked to you and Leslie. And then we were driving around, and at one point I was like, I got to go back to Toronto. Like I had something, my wife and everything was there. Like I wasn't anticipating being gone for that long. And so I was there for a little while, and Tim was like, yeah, I'm just going to stay and do a little bit more location scouting. I was like, okay, sure. Tim likes to drive, so he just drove the whole state, like literally went to like every corner of it. And somehow like by like a week later, I came back down to New Mexico, and Tim just never left. And then somehow we were like, Tim literally didn't leave until we went, except other than for like a 8-hour stretch that Tim and April went back to go meet Tommy Lee Jones. I think that might've been the only time that you left the state until we finished production. And at that point we were like, we weren't there. Like we were early in the process, but we were just like, it was like the momentum that we needed to just go and commit, and we're like, this is happening no matter what. And Tim literally just shoved his stuff in storage, and then post-production, he came up to Canada. We did post-production in Canada, and Tim's stuff was still in storage for a while, and then COVID hit, so he got stuck here for another like 6 months because everything got delayed and whatever. I don't know if you got your stuff out of storage yet.
FYI, my stuff's still in storage, and I still don't have a permanent base yet. So we're working on that. But I will say, we did and James and I just posted up at the Crown Plaza in Albuquerque, and I was just hanging out there. And I do remember there was a moment where like, we gotta be in New Mexico to make this thing. I don't know how we're gonna do it. And I remember there was a moment where like Andre called me, our sales agent. He's like, hey man, what's going on? Can you meet? And I'm like, no man, I can't. I'm in New Mexico. And he's like, what are you doing in New Mexico? I'm like, dude, we gotta shoot a movie here. He's like, oh man, how are we gonna, what?
Keep in mind that Andre's a sales agent, but also a producer on this. Like he's a lead producer. He's very much part of the production. We just went. We like didn't tell anyone. We were just like, we're going and we're doing this.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah.
So April, when in the very beginning with you and Tim, did you always know that you were going to direct it? Was that always the plan?
Yeah, I mean, we really hone in, and we've done, I don't know, 5 or 6 films together. And from the beginning, even before concept, we're like, what do we want our next film to be? What do we want to say? What's interesting right now? And somebody dealing with mental health issues and conspiracies and having a really unique film and memories, and having that broken and being really insular in thought was something that we really loved at the time. And so we come up with concepts together, and then I'm story editing, and we're writing together, and we're boarding together. So we're just kind of attached at the hip from the birth or the conception of the next film.
It's like children. Okay, I'm tossing it to you, Leslie.
So did you guys know that Tommy Lee Jones, I believe he has a house here, and he will almost, he loves working in New Mexico. Did you guys know that? Or was it more random?
I mean, that wasn't why we went after him, but I think it was probably some added incentive. I mean, you could tell he just loves New Mexico so much when he showed up. My wife actually ended up coming down. It was the only 2 weeks I saw her, basically the entire time we were in New New Mexico, and she came down and she ended up being Tommy's assistant, and she drove him around for a while, and she had all these stories about Ruidoso and the history and everything, because he knew so much and had so much to share about it.
Yeah, yeah. I've been on a couple of films with him. It seems like he just loves working in New Mexico, which is, you know, lucky for you guys too.
Yeah.
James, do you want to say anything about some of the processes you had to go through with the, you don't have to, but like the changing incentive laws? Remember you were going to shoot in June and then you waited, we were like, can you wait a month? Is there any way you can juggle this? Because the incentive laws are going to change.
Well, we had, because the story needed it, like the town of Wander, we didn't have a huge budget. So when we went to Carrizozo, like Tim called, it was when I was actually back in Canada for that week. Tim called April and I and said, he's like, I found Wander. This is the place. It's like, it was like almost like you barely have to dress it. It's like what he had imagined. So, you know, we were set on that was going to be the place that we were shooting, but it's super remote. Like, you know, it's, I think 2+ hours from Albuquerque. There's no resource there, right? There's a couple motels on the corner stops. And then if you go into Ruidoso, you can get a hotel, but even that's, you know, 45-minute drive or more, depending on the weather and all that. So, oh my goodness, I lost my track. What was the question again?
We were talking about
the changing incentive.
Oh, the incentive, right. So because we were shooting remotely and we were dedicated to that, New Mexico had added the 5% bonus incentive if you were shooting in a rural area, and we were definitely shooting in a rural area. So that for us was a significant amount of money, you know, especially as we're fighting to put together the financing still. Like, we're there committed to shooting, but we're still putting together the financing as we're rolling up. That 5% made a big difference. So it was worth it for us to push by the time that we did and commit to starting. Technically, I guess it was July 1st or something was the date we could start incurring costs and claim the incentive. So that made a big difference, and it was worth it. But the challenge that we had, which you guys obviously will remember, is that even though the incentive changed, the rules and definitions around it had still not really actually been set. So up until actually, even to be honest, even to the point of us claiming the credit like a year later, we didn't know if certain things were going to qualify under the rural bonus. Like, if we bought something in Albuquerque, was it going to get the 5% tax credit because we used it in Carrizozo, for example? I was hoping yes. Turns out no. So that one hurt. But so that was a bit of a challenge to navigate. But I mean, it made a world of a difference, and I think it was a really important piece for us.
Great. Listen, it's up to you, the order you want to go in. My next instinct would be to ask Faye how she created such an amazing look. You know, the difference between Carrizozo, AKA Wander, and what was going on below the surface. It was just, it was harsh and very effective. How did you, what was your process, Faye?
Well, the land itself is so incredibly inspiring, and like landing there and witnessing just the beauty, the sheer incredible beauty of that landscape and those waters it's really, really special. So to start our shooting, we were invited by a local elder to hold ceremony to open that space, and that really helped us ground the work in a more intimate relationship with the land. And we are acknowledging that the Pueblo, Navajo, and Apache nations have been there since time immemorial. So acknowledging that in all of the work that we did was really important, to have gentle footing, and then a whole lot of passion and a lot of sweat and blood in the work that we're doing. And in our team, it was a very, very small team of super trusted, creative, inspired, and really resourceful world-making art department that created this, vision within, like inspired by April and Tim's vision. We just dug into that and found the world that is Wander. And to mention, the local community members really grounded the work in our relationship buildings too. So things became only possible through that supportive network that came to be through those relationships. And, the small community of Carrizozo just brought that into reality. We would not have been able to do anything without that local community support. And those, and the small team of very strong, capable, resourceful crew.
Well, I love the look was.
I would echo Faye's comment about the community, because it's such a small place. I think the population is like 900 or something.
Yeah.
So, if we went there and nobody, anyone had their guard up, there's only so many buildings in the town, right? And, we can go outside, but for us to travel an hour or 2 hours to go to a different town or whatever to shoot anything didn't make sense. So we really had to we used all of Carrizozo for what it was. And some of the sets that we had, especially as they're written in the script, are not things that you would find in a small town like that. And we were searching everywhere, but where are we going to find this bunker thing? And it just so happened that Todd, who was the principal, the superintendent at the school there, was like, "Hey, we got a really creepy basement. You should check this out." We're like, "Great." So we went down there and we're like, "Perfect. It's it's halfway there already." So
it was so creepy. Like, we scheduled our hours of working in that space around, just the strange feelings in the space. We would only work during the day in there.
It was a really small place, but it was perfect. It was, at the end of the day, it worked for us. That was, so, Todd gave us the keys to the school literally and welcomed us in and allowed us to use that school as a resource. And it was we couldn't have done it without that support. And it was that was a support that the whole town brought to us. Ray Dean was the superstar, I think, that you guys put us in touch with originally, who was the Carrizozo film liaison, you called him. And I was amazed that they had a film liaison in a town that small, but the support he brought was incredible. And he introduced us to everyone and every place. And like I said, we ended up in every corner. And then Faye and her team just had to work with what they got, work with what they had from April and Tim's vision, and then find a happy balance between the two.
What a great community. What a great
amazing.
community.
Yeah.
Of course, now they're going to be inundated with, 20 requests to film there. But hey, why not, right?
Yeah.
I actually filmed there just a few months after you guys. And I'm like,
really?
whoa. Oh, wow, I'm in Carrizozo all of a sudden. And I also had an amazing experience there. Everyone was so nice. Anyway, Robert Dean, tell us about your process. Tell us what happened.
Oh boy, where to start? So we have a mutual friend who Tim was talking about, Andre, right? And so Andre got in contact with me and he said, I can't do the impression as good as Tim can, but he basically said, "Hey, we've got this movie that we're going to shoot in New Mexico, or we're looking to New Mexico." I said, "Well, cool, man. Let's partner up on it, dude. What kind of movie is it? Share some details with me." So he sent me the deck, right? And I saw the visuals, which is basically the visual representation of the movie condensed into this, slideshow. And so I looked through it and I looked at the visuals and he said, we're looking for this old rundown town. Here's kind of the aesthetics we're looking for. I said, "All right, Andre, I know New Mexico well. I've been here my whole life. I got 5 places for you to go look at. Carrizozo is on the top of that list." He said, "I'm going to be sending Tim and the rest of the gang out there." And I had never met them at this point. And so I said, "Tell them to go visit Carrizozo, but drive around the whole state anyway and get a sense of it." But I said, Carrizozo is my favorite choice. And so I think it was a few weeks after that, I got in touch, or you guys had reached out to me, maybe James, I think you had reached out to me, told me that you guys were already in New Mexico cruising around. So I drove back to my hometown of Capitan and met them at Renee's Diner and instantly fell in love with this group of people. And I said, wow, this is probably, these people are as crazy as I am. And that's why I love them so much, because we are the definition of indie filmmakers, right? Like you see people like this and they're like, we drove down, I'm listening to Tim and he's like, yeah, I just packed up my bags. I threw it in a storage shed. We all just hopped in a car. And I'm like, I love these guys. I thought I was the only one that lived like this, but I found a family here. So from there, I think it became getting inside of their heads, right? Like learning what their vision was, like what, and listening to April talk about the story. She just had such a, when she would talk about it, you could just see it in her eyes. Like her and Tim would describe this world and what they imagined it would look like. And I'm a visual person myself. So I was trying to get inside of their head and understand this vision. And I'm like, I love this. I know I want to help you guys make this. And I think that's what I told them. They said, what do you want to do on this movie? And I said, I want to help you guys make this movie. Let's get shit done and let's make it happen. And I said, you guys tell me what, I'll do whatever it takes to help you guys make this movie. So I think from there, it really started to evolve where, we dove into the locations of really trying to put this world together that existed in Tim and April's head. And me being from that area and just knowing so many of the local people, it's always cool to go back to your hometown, right? And see like James is talking about, like Todd, the superintendent, or Ray Dean, who has my last name and we're not related, but maybe we are, who knows? Anyway, you start to just, it's cool to go back to your hometown and see the support where these people rally behind you and say, hey, we want to help you make this movie. And that's, in my opinion, one of the things that made this film possible, because we did have so much support. I mean, my stories could go on for days about that, but it was, that was, I think the beginning of it was identifying the locations, understanding the logistics of it, and how do we pull this off, right? How do we, like what James was saying, how do we find that happy balance between logisticals, like what is actually feasible, and the creative? And Kirizozo was like, it was born out of Tim's head and April's vision. It's like so much of it already existed there. And we did have to get somewhat creative on some of the locations, but it was like, I loved going out on scouts with Tim and April and Faye and the whole group, right? Because I could see their eyes come alive and they'd be like, yes, this is just like this and that. And they were just like kids in a candy shop, right? And that's what filmmaking is all about, right? Like, that's why we all do it. Like, that's the essence of the love that we have for it, to get in that flow motion where everything's just rolling and you're feeling good, right? So that was the beginning of it. And then after we started identifying those locations and seeing like what worked for Tim and April, after that, it just got to putting the pieces together, right? And being from New Mexico, that's where I think our job came in, was like, let's find, it's everything at that point: locations, vendors, crew, resources, picture cars, everything, and just really leaning on those personal connections to make it happen. So for me, it was, I mean, it's a cliche thing to say, but they say like you form a family on a movie, but it's true, and if you're lucky enough to spend, like we did, months and months together. I mean, that was my whole summer. I spent my birthday with these guys. Like, I spent literally my entire summer with these guys, and it was that's what it's about. You know what I mean? You go out there, everybody puts everything on the line, and they're working their asses off day and night around. James is losing weight like by the second, and his, but we were all there to support each other, so I think that's what it's about. And you stay focused on the vision, and it's worth it, because you see those moments, like I said, where April or Tim, especially once you start rolling camera and you start to actually see it come to life, and you see them like in their element and loving what is coming out. And it's like, to me, that's the satisfaction, right? You sit back and you see April over there, like with Aaron and Tommy Lee, and you got these crazy locations and picture cars, and Jesse bringing an airplane out of thin air and like all this crazy stuff. And you're just like, this is what it's about, right? Which, speaking of, Jesse just actually walked in, so I'll let him actually come pop in on the computer and say hi.
Okay.
Hey guys, how's it going? Oh, hey April.
Hi.
Jesse.
Let me see your face. Come a little closer. Do you have a beard?
Yes, I do.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
So Jesse was the locations manager, and I hear he's actually the man extraordinaire who can do everything.
That's the
Yes,
best bio I picked for you.
Thank you, April. I appreciate that. Very good.
The thing is Robert, you know, had the title of production supervisor. Jesse had the title of locations manager, but it was not in the traditional sense. Like, these guys were literally everywhere, doing everything, pulling every string and helping us put the whole thing together. If we didn't have their, like, we literally would never have been able to put the movie together without their support the way that they did, and their connection to the local community and everything like that. So, like, you know, we had to give these guys titles out of a formality, basically, the way that they helped. Like, they did those jobs, but so much more, and it was crazy.
Can
That's why I laughed.
just say
Robert
on
said,
that note,
There he
Robert
is.
and Jesse, can I just say, Robert and Jesse, they 100% were like, they were like, for me, the calm. When we were in the storm and we were shooting, I'd be like, where are the cowboys? And I'd like look, and all of a sudden you'd see them like strut onto set, and they'd be like covered in oil because they just had to flip a car over. And they're like, yeah, we just went and we got this truck and we had to dent it and we had to get a bulldozer. And then we had to like save these people. Don't worry, there's no rattlers over here. We'll get rid of them. I was like, Robert and Jesse, thank you for coming back. I feel safe. I feel better. Okay, things are going to be okay. We could not have done it without these two. They were like, and there's one vision I just want to say, I know this might be a little sentimental, but it's one of my favorite moments of pre-production. And I think it really speaks to a testament of like indie filmmaking and the spirit of indie filmmaking. And it was one of my favorite things that Faye put together was the Wander sign, which was something that was so iconic for the film. And it was something, you know, you have this beautiful landscape, which Ray Dean helped us find this beautiful road. And then Faye constructed this gorgeous sign, which was like the heart and soul of the movie. And then we had to put this sign together, and it was a massive, massive sign. And I remember we all rolled out there when we were finally putting it together, because they're like, we were back at base camp. We just started hearing rumors like Faye's out there with like Stacy, and they're trying to put up this sign, and it's like 20 feet tall. We're like, what is going on? And anyway, we finally rolled out there, and it was just this moment where like Robert was there, Jesse was there, Faye was there, the whole team was there. And it was like 2 days before shooting, and everyone came together, and you're just in the landscape. The sun was set, the sign was going up, and you just saw these people putting it together. And it was like, that for me was the moment where it's like, oh, the film's happening, we're going to be okay. And like, it's so corny and cliche to say, but it's in those moments, because indie filmmaking, one of my favorite things is in those moments you see it's a testament to human spirit, and it's a testament to connection. And it's like something I really cherish and I'll always have. And all these people were a part of it. So,
you know, you bring up such a good point, which is that the spirit of indie filmmaking, you get the right people. You get people who are all have a good, positive, noble intention, and miracles happen, right?
When I got into this business, I said, you know, everybody asks like, why am I, or I don't know if you guys have all had this. I think anybody in the film business has this moment where they're like, why am I doing this? Or like, how the hell did I end up in this position, right? Like, and for me, I started thinking about that. I'm like, you know, why did I get into this? And I was like, it's simple. I just want to make good projects with good people. And that's it. You know, I think it doesn't have to be any more complex than that. I just want to make good projects with great people. And
absolutely.
And that's why when I met these guys, we were like, I told Jesse about them, and I told James, I'll never forget the day I said, James, my buddy, I'm like, we're going to need him, man. I promise you. And he's like, well, what does he do? I'm like, well, he does a little bit of everything, man, but he's going to help us out big time. And he was like, okay, well, let's go meet him. And then the whole gang met, and instantly, you know, like I said, it feels cliche, but we were inseparable. Like I would have done anything for these guys, still would, but when you're in the thick of it, you create, it's almost like going to battle, right? I mean, you feel like these people are your brothers and sisters.
Absolutely. Listen, Lisa wanted to ask another question, and then I want David to David is a good storyteller, and he's one of the actors. So Lisa, ask your question, and then I'll talk to David.
I'm gonna butt in from time to time if you don't mind.
Yeah.
But I'm thinking about all the people I know, including myself right now, that are planning to make a feature in the near future. And it's just, it really helps to hear about your passion and your tenacity, because it's like, I remember even when you were going full steam ahead and you had everybody there, it's like, oh, but wait, the financing just dropped out. And you guys had these moments of just like, the whole bottom fell out for like 2 days, and then you're like, ah, and then it came back, and you were off and on and crazy, but that you never lost the faith. It's like you always kept it, and it always worked out for you. And I think it really speaks to the team that you built, and that you just didn't give up, even in like, I mean, you had all the stuff there, and the people had moved out, and you couldn't, you had a lot of issues, but you just were like, no, happening, utterly focused, and would never have given up, and I don't know, it really is inspiring to me. So I don't know if you wanted to talk about some of those tribulations, because that's the reality. People romanticize what this is, and yes, once you get rolling, I think it's super awesome, right? But then it's that to get there to you're actually like, okay, the money's in the bank and the check's cleared, you know what I mean? That you start to breathe,
Mm-hmm. I think that was why that moment where Tim and I originally first went out to New Mexico was so important, because it was like, once you've started, when you're in your home and you're talking about we're going to make a movie in however many months, it's so easy to just keep pushing and pushing, and like, it's hard for things don't fall in line with the timeline that you want them to. But we just had this, once you sort of like push yourself off the deep end, you're like, well, there's no turning back now, otherwise you're sinking entirely. And like, I'm definitely not advocating for anyone to go out and try and like, put themselves into millions of dollars of risk by any means, but we definitely put ourselves really deep on the line. But it was like the only way we were getting this done. It was like that we went, and it was just like that, like you said, we were never going to give up, but at a certain point we couldn't give up. Like otherwise, like we'll go back, and my wife I have to explain that I have to sell my house because we're in it. So we went over the deep end pretty quickly, but it was calculated, right? We knew we had all the pieces to put together. It's not like it was like blind faith. Let's hope someone throws a bunch of money at us. That definitely wasn't in, but a lot of, as you said, like we got Tommy Lee late, and we had varying ideas of what caliber of an actor we were going to get for that role. So, that changes the budget accordingly. And then, we had to get our film bonded, and, once the bond reviews everything, like we're going in on a tight budget. And, they said, well, you need to have more. So we were, a few days before shooting, we were like, okay, great. We got to raise this much amount of money, just because we're like, otherwise we're not going to get it bonded. And if we don't get it bonded, none of the financing closes. So we went like, we were making all the calls, and it's like a miracle that it managed to come together in the timeline that it did. But it always was going to, it was like just chaos because of the fluctuation that we had with casting as late as we did.
But just on that note, one last thing on that, I would have to say, April and I, we've been in this for a long time now, I guess. And from the first time when we first started, we did our first feature, we didn't know what the heck we were doing. But there was a senior producer that gave April a piece of advice, and she told me, and it literally to this day is something, anytime we have a thing where we always come back to it, and it was just 2 words, and it's never doubt. And it was a piece of advice that this senior producer had, and he's like, you can never have doubt, because the second you have doubt, you're putting everything at risk. And the funny thing is, it's like a weird mentality to get into, but once you do that, and once the momentum starts, miracles can happen. It's the craziest thing. You would be so surprised what can happen. And you also be surprised when you really get in the thick of it. 24 hours is a lot of time. And a lot of crazy stuff can happen in a very short amount of time when you're really, really needing it to happen. So that's the one thing, like we have it taped and we talk about it all the time. It's just like, never doubt and have your crew. That's it. And by crew, it means like those people you trust, the tight circle. That's like been the best piece of advice. We still run by those things today. I say it to myself every day, even when things get the hardest. But yeah, it is crazy making
and your tight family group, whatever that might consist of, it has to be surrounded by people that are believers. Like you need believers, and that's the belief in the impossible. Like dreams are possible, the intangible, the unseeable, the unforeseen, that the things that you cannot even imagine. You have to surround yourself with daydreamers and imagination, and people believe. They'll go on the journey with you, and they enjoy it and they love the ride. And for me, like what Tim was saying, looking around at everybody in New Mexico doing what they love best, watching their talents shine, pushing themselves past their personal limits to bring something to the screen, and watching them take huge risks, and watching them see the rewards and all of their talents shine, like to watch that unfold and to watch that come to life is just, to me, as exciting as the film. I absolutely thrive and am motivated every second, through the ups and downs and the roller coasters that present themselves not only in pre-production, but every day. Throughout the day, you're constantly losing time, and there's never enough time, and there's never enough people or enough money. So the roller coaster ride, like Tim said, you look to your right and to your left, you see Robert and Jesse. They're believers. You can't let those kind of people down. They're doing it for everybody. So it really motivates you to continue, and you can't believe they're doing superhero moves in front of your eyes. I look over and I see Faye carrying like a massive piece of metal overhead. People are doing things that are extraordinary, and it brings the best out of everybody, and everybody's in it together. So if you can create that sense of believing in dreams on set, and I protect that like a fierce tiger, because if any seeds of any other kind come in, they can infiltrate really quickly. So yeah. I'm just like constantly karate chopping, because I'm like, keep my believers believing, because that's where the magic happens, and the actors can feel it. Everybody can feel that.
I think you just described the ingredients for the best directors right there.
You did. I would like to have David talk for a minute, because he told me two really funny stories about his audition and his callback. Not that I want to put you on the spot,
No.
but I also, after watching Wander, David plays the bad guy. And even if he's not in the scene, people are referring to him. So he had a very important role in this. And David, tell us a little bit about yourself and what happened in the audition.
Before I get into that, I want to piggyback on what April was saying, because I'm not sure that the people listening are quite aware of the close-knit crew you are referring to. The woman that picked me up at the hotel that drove me to set is a friend of April's family and has worked on 4 or 5 different films of hers.
My aunt.
Right, okay. The man that played my bodyguard in the movie is April's father. She relied strongly on family, and brought those people to, and Faye is there working, and brought those people, and all those people were believers, and you could feel the energy. As we were just talking in the car from the hotel to the set, and just talking about the experiences she has had, working with you and supporting you, and having that support, I think, is really, really valuable and essential, and people that believe in you. So before I went on to that, I just wanted to piggyback on that. Like all the other actors in the movie, I auditioned. I almost did not audition for this role. I got the script, and I had a very bad sore throat. And 3 days later, that sore throat developed into a full-blown cold. And the last thing casting directors want is a sick actor in their waiting room. And they tell you, please don't come in if you're sick, you know, cancel the audition. It's not gonna, you know, make or break your career, you know. And this was my first time meeting the casting director. And I did not want to be that actor who had their first audition and didn't show up or complained they were sick. And so I took some Sudafed and 3 or 4 swigs of Robitussin DM. I went to my audition and I had to wait in the waiting room. So I took a couple more sips. And by the time I got in, I was so high on cough medicines and decongestants that I couldn't remember my lines. And the scene was all me directed to the camera, so I could not rely on a reader to like help me out. And God bless the casting. I think I did 7 or 8 different takes because I could not get it right. And she saw something in me and she believed in me and she worked with me. And I will be forever grateful for that because I would not have made it high on decongestants.
Right. And then you got called back.
And then I got called back and a very strange thing. This is the only time, I'm not sure April realizes this. I've done a lot of auditions where you have action in the middle of the scene you're auditioning for. And most of the time I will walk in as an actor and say, so how are we doing this? And 100% of the time up to my audition with April and Tim, they said, we're not doing it. You know, you'll do that with a stunt coordinator or do something, just do the dialogue. And I guess this is a spoiler alert. One of the scenes I have is I get shot and the script calls me to go down on my knees and die and eat the dirt. And so I didn't rehearse that because I figured we're not going to do that, you know? So I walked in, but I asked the question. I said, so how are we going to do that? And you said, we're just going to do it. You're going to get shot and die. And the first time I did it, I sucked. I was awful. But I'm here. It was fun. I tell the story. People have asked, and I have said, Wander is the most fun I've had on a set because I got to work with big name Hollywood stars. It was also the most painful because of that death scene where I had to keep going down on my knees and do that. I limped back to my hotel room that night and took 4 Advil and went to bed.
Oh, well, you know, like everyone else, Faye was lifting heavy something over her head. Everybody was doing superhuman things. So I guess you had to as well.
There you go.
The funny thing on that, David, is even Aaron, like he would talk to April and I every day on set. He'd be like, we're in New Mexico. We're getting down and dirty. That's what this film is. I'm sure he said it to everybody. Everybody would have heard it. He was always doing that. And then he'd be like down, he'd be rubbing dirt all over his face. So it was just like part of, I guess, the world of Wander.
Yes.
But David, we really appreciated you doing that in the audition too. I remember because we were like, because April was like, we need to see that moment. It's the most important moment.
I have to admit, I did. I really wanted to see how you would die because it had to be beautiful.
And I had no idea how I was going to do that.
Spectacularly. And you got the job.
Well, thank you.
If I remember, David, a couple of days before, you and I were actually practicing dying. And when you
because it was like, now that I got the role, it's like, well, how do I do this?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. So I was coaching him on like, you know, how you receive the, like this, and then yeah. Anyway, anyone want to say anything else before we open it up to the general audience? Carrie Rose, do you have questions that have come in?
I don't have, I'm keeping an eye. I don't have any that have come in, but I actually have a couple myself, if you don't mind me asking.
Please.
So I loved how you gave us some insights, April, on effectively how really you acquire talent. There's two other keywords that I think are often a barrier for independent filmmakers, especially those that are making probably one of their first larger projects. And that was sales agent and pre-sales. And so you guys had a great sales agent, and I think that was instrumental into helping you pull together a lot of what you did. And I'm wondering if you have any just general advice for indie filmmakers, especially those that don't really have a sales agent in their contact list yet. What's the best way to kind of put yourself out there, resource, find contacts, or partner with sales agents if you haven't really met that one yet, if you haven't found your Andre?
For the first 4 films that Tim and I did together, first 4, we had no pre-sales, nor did we have any sales agent contacts. So it's a totally different journey, and you're doing the legwork and calling on your own. I mean, they were there to cheer us on during Wander, but we were still doing the legwork and calling. Like, to cast Christopher Lloyd in Dead Before Dawn, which was $1 million 3D film shot out in Niagara Falls, I was literally in my apartment wearing slippers, pretending to be an assistant out of LA, asking to speak to a manager to talk to Christopher about how he must do this role. I mean, you go out of the box because you have to. You will do whatever it takes because you're trying to create the momentum that starts the film moving. And like Tim said, you don't doubt, you just stay focused. And I do encourage indie filmmakers to go towards obviously management teams rather than agents. You have a great shot at going realistically, make sure you're going after somebody that sort of makes sense with your budget level. But I would say go towards the management because they're a lot easier to approach than the agents are, and a lot of the time. And if not, there's a lot of ways right now, way more than when we started, to contact people in the internet. Like, there's a lot of new ways to really find out where these people are going and where they might be, or make sure, see if there's friends or family friends or anybody. Kind of just, you have to really do some digging and then take some big risks and make some phone calls that before you want, you just want to throw up before you call, but then you just you do it because you have to. But
That's
I would
great.
say, we were
I was
going
gonna say,
blind. We didn't have sales agents in our first 4 films, and you can still make it all happen.
Wonderful.
I think a great resource today, and if I was making my first film, I would want someone to tell me this. And there's 2 things. Number one, you should model after other similar films. So you should do your research and try and find other films that are of the same tone. Like, if you're making a thriller, what's another, low budget thriller that did this, that, and the other thing? And it's about, you want to get contact, like April said, IMDb Pro. Okay, you have to, it's an app, you have to pay to get it. It's not a lot of money. If you go on there and you type in any film, you can find the film. It will list who are the distributors, who are the sales agents, who are the people. Those sales agents will have their emails right there. It's daunting, and like April said, you'll feel like throwing up probably when you're making original contact, and a lot of times you won't get responses, but you will get responses eventually. And even look at, like, Andre is a great friend, a great partner, and a fantastic sales agent and producer. We met him on a whim in 2012 with Dead Before Dawn. And that was something that grew over those years. And that was when even Andre was in a younger spot and his position as a sales agent. And it's about, again, the beauty of the partnerships that can be formed that way. But IMDb Pro and model and try and find those other
Perfect.
films that are
Just
similar.
piggyback on that too, real quick, Tim. It's funny you said that. I was gonna say the exact same thing. As IMDb Pro is a blueprint for you to go look into other projects similar, like exactly what Tim was saying. The kind of movie that you want to make, there's so many resources right there to go find who produced them, who was the team behind them, who was the sales agent, who was the distributor, who was the financier, right? That all exists right there. And it's an email or a phone call away, and you never know until you try. And I think on that, like in that same note, right, it's just like we were talking about with production. right? And building your team and your family. This business is all about who you work with. And you should never sacrifice your integrity, because that's a hard lesson I think all filmmakers learn, right? We all want to make a movie so bad that at some point, some people we know have gone to extreme lengths to do whatever it takes and sacrifice their integrity. So don't lose your integrity, but when you find these people that you like and that have the same principles as you, from the crew to the sales agents to everything, you'll build a family like that. And that's what's important. Surround yourself with good people that believe in you, that support you. And even if they don't at first, you'll find the people that'll take a shot on you. But IMDb Pro is a great resource for that. And yeah, you don't know until you try, like April said. You got to get creative sometimes.
That's right. Yeah. And like they
Great
said, the
point,
worst you'll
Robert.
hear is nothing, and that's okay.
Don't
Thank
sell
you.
your soul to make a movie.
Thank you so much. And Leslie, we have one question in the chat from Robin. She wants to know, I think probably for April, what is your next project and will it be in New Mexico?
We are working on the next project. It's called Hello Stranger, with James and Tim. Somehow we're going to have to find a way to get Jesse and Robert and involved, and Faye. These people are also have such huge talents. Like Robert is a filmmaker and photographer, and they make films, and they're incredibly talented, and they're doing things on a daily basis. I would say if you're in New Mexico, reach out to them and get them into your core group, because they're so unbelievably talented, way too qualified for what we had them do. You know, they can run a ship. They're unbelievable. And Faye's an artist. So hopefully we can get some more on our team. David, I don't know if you can fly to Canada this time, because we're going to shoot in Canada. You know, but
I will go anywhere for you.
Okay.
You have our passports, right?
Hello Stranger is like a completely different world. It's a sci-fi thriller, and we're really excited about it. And we obviously, because of COVID, we had to slow things down a bit, and we are hoping to shoot in the fall.
I have a question related to that. Could you have shot this during COVID with all the?
Wander?
Yeah.
No, I don't think so. We did post work. We had to do our sound, our full sound mix was done at the beginning of COVID. So we were mixing remotely, which was the first time any of us had ever done that. We had very ambitious deadlines to finish, and COVID hit and everything shut down. And then we luckily had worked with the post houses before. So we had working relationships where they kind of opened the doors just remotely to find a solution to allow us to Skype into the audio sessions. And then the color session as well, we had to do remote during COVID, which was a first for everyone on the team, including the colorist. So we were sort of like, again, thrown into something completely new with COVID, and we were able to not make our deadlines, of course, because COVID kind of shut the first 2 months down, but we were able to finish the film, which was unreal. In the middle of COVID, we finished the film and locked everything right in July, August, which we feel very, grateful and blessed that everybody came to the table with really innovative technologies very fast, and were opening their doors to us to allow us to finish Wander, because it was a real tight squeeze, and we might not have had the DVDs on the shelves. So that was a blessing. But I don't think I don't know what the world would be like with COVID and Wander. I'm still, it all feels so surreal.
I don't know how we would have pulled it off, but I know that for the beginning of this last year and through COVID, I think it was extremely difficult. Now I can see there's a lot of people are back up and shooting. There's people shooting outside my door right now in my office. There's a lot of people that are back at it, and they seem to have gone down to these micro crews, and they've got all these, there's COVID specialists. It's a specific job now that there's like, the COVID safety officers is like a specific job that people have, at least in Canada. And
no, it's in the,
I do think it's like, now it's definitely a lot more possible to get up and running and going. The one massive challenge that, to be honest, I'm not sure what everyone's doing around here, but insurance companies don't want to take on projects, and they don't want to cover COVID or anything that could even resemble COVID. So you've either got to take on some sort of massive risk. In Canada, the CMPA is working with the Canadian government to come up with like an insurance policy for films that's like a side policy from the government because they don't want the film industry to shut down, and they need to support it, but they know no one can shoot if they don't have insurance, right? So there's a whole new set of logistics. Even when we're building budgets and everything like that now, we're looking at like, okay, you stack in all these different roles that never existed before. You try and take away as many roles as you can because you don't want to have too many people on set. You want to mitigate as much of risk as you can in that regard. And then there's like, better pump up the contingency because who the hell knows what's going to happen.
Right.
If we were to have to stop shooting in the middle of Wander the way that some people did and then leave and then come and pick back up, we would have been in a lot of trouble. And luckily we would have been insured at that time. So maybe we wouldn't have been in that much trouble. But if we couldn't get that policy that we did have because we started shooting during COVID, we would have been screwed.
There's also something so organic with filmmaking and being on set. It's our favorite time to be making the film. Like our favorite part is being on set and riding the organic wave that is the group like connectivity. So you're touching people, you're sweating people, you're in the same places, you're tight squeeze. Like I just still have a hard time wrapping my head around like trying to distance yourselves when you're being creative. You're literally pulling towards one another. Like I'm such like an in-person person touching face, I don't understand creatively how to build a world at such a far distance. I mean, Wander was so intimate. I don't know, it would change things in my head. I can't even picture that just because of, you have to move so fast and you rely on everybody and it just seems so intertwined. COVID just doesn't seem right for set.
It's funny you say that, April. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, James.
No, I was just saying in the place we were with the resource we had, I don't think Wander would have happened in COVID.
Yeah. It was funny you say that though too, because me and Jesse did 2 films together during COVID, like right at the tail end of last year, and all we could talk about was like the good old days of Wander when we could run up and hug each other, and because that's the way we were on set, right? And we're like, this never would have flown on Wander because, yeah, like April was saying, we were hugging and crying and bleeding together and everything, fighting, crying, all of it. So making a movie during COVID is, it takes the fun out of it in a lot of ways. I mean, it is what it is. You still get out there and you make your film, but it's just it's challenging. And every day, like James was saying, there's so much risk involved that every day filmmaking's hard enough. Making a movie during COVID when you're literally like every time you do your PCR test, you're looking at your results, sweating, wondering if you're going to get a positive result. It's like the stress level of it is, I'll just be glad to get back to the good old days of filmmaking.
David, you had mentioned something that was interesting about theatrical release versus, do you want to ask that question?
Sure. I have a producer friend in LA that is in charge of post-production, and he put together 3 films in 2020 that had budgets between 25 and 35 million, and he's having to sit on them because there is not enough money in the on-demand market to cover those costs. Is it possible? And Wander did not have a theatrical release. So is it possible for an independent film to like Wander, to recover its costs just on the on-demand market? Or what is the future like?
It's an extremely
well, this is a big
to release a film, especially like the size of Wander, because it's in the middle. And we rely heavily as independent filmmakers on film festivals, and to not have the launch of a film festival, which creates the buzz and the press. And we were really close to getting into Cannes, and it was canceled. The Directors Fortnight was canceled this year. So that changed the whole trajectory of the film very quickly. In just a pin drop, everything could have been different had it premiered at Cannes. So that changed things. And then we had a theatrical booked for the US and in Canada, and we would get updates weekly on the COVID theaters that were shutting down and the numbers dropping. And it's just not the same because with smaller films, you need to see the posters, you get the reviewers out, and the word of mouth in the community and the smaller theaters is what really helps a film like this thrive. And I I wish it was different for Wander. It did. I said to Tim, well, it'll take another 5 years. We'll make another film and it can't happen again. It's just unfortunate timing. I do think more people might have seen it digitally than, we ever could anticipate, because a lot more viewers are watching home entertainment, but it's definitely doesn't have the same momentum when you're a smaller film really needing that buzz. Personally, I don't think it's the same.
COVID was a crazy time for independent film. And there's everyone you talk to were just like, what is happening? And for the craziest thing about it was, at first, everybody was just in a mode of speculation. There was no method. There's no pandemic game book when it comes to film releasing and all that sort of stuff. And you already have an industry that's like sitting on such fragile ground when it comes to release strategies and release patterns and all that sort of stuff. Anyway, it made the last year and a half for basically anybody in the industry. You talk to them, they're like, wow, it's a crazy thing. All I can say is this: in the past 2 months specifically, now that markets are starting to pick up, I've been talking to certain other people and other peers, and Cannes going live again in July this year. I have heard the speculation now is it's going to be cray and the market's going to bounce back fully. Now, I don't know what's going to happen because we don't have a crystal ball. I can't see the future, but I do think that we're going to have a big bounce back. So this COVID time, while, Wander did get stuck right in the middle of it, a lot of exciting things could happen with Wander in the next 2-3 years as other stuff happens. But yeah, it's been insane. And I can't imagine your friend. I've heard other stories like that, especially the $25 to $30 million films that had their full theatricals booked and then they just canceled them all. Like, that's insane to me.
Right, they're just sitting waiting
for COVID. Really,
yeah, I think it's really problematic for those studio films for sure. I think in general, digital, there are release strategies for digital now that I think are pretty reliable, and I think a lot of indie films rely on them already. A lot of indie films aren't relying on theatricals anyways. The momentum and everything that April's speaking about is great, but they're not really making a ton of money in theatrical. Running a theatrical is expensive for the distributor, and the returns on it isn't always necessarily where you're making your dollar anyways. It helps support digital, because if something's in theater and then they do a day and date and they sell it at a premium on digital because it's still in theaters, that's one part of the sales strategy that people lean on. But the one I guess positive takeaway, I think, is that people are right now, for the last few years, everyone's been trying to figure out everyone knows that people still want to watch movies, but people have always been questioning how are they going to keep getting made, because nobody really knows how the distribution is going to get worked out. Over the last 5-10 years, a lot of that's been figured out, or at least it's falling into place. And I think for digital specifically, there seems to be a lot more of a defined plan and route for how those releases happen and how people can recoup on them. So I don't think for an indie film, you're dead just because you didn't get into the theater. If you have a $25, $30 million film that's reluctant, that always had a theatrical strategy, I don't even know. I've never put something like that together, so I don't even know. I wouldn't even know where. I can't even imagine the situations that some of those producers are in, because those are the producers that were going to have the P&A behind it for a theatrical that was going to get, millions and millions of dollars in box office in the first place, and they were going to rely on that revenue a lot more than probably most indie films were.
Okay, thank you. Well, we will see. None of us know, but we're all going to see, and we're all part of it. And we have to go. But if any one of you has any last looks, last words, last piece of advice, I think the advice you gave, is the most important. But if anyone has any last word of advice that they'd like to share, please do before we all.
I know, April, we have a celebrity there, don't we? Don't you have a celebrity sighting there, April? One last celebrity sighting you need to show everybody before.
This is Charlie.
Oh, this is El Perro.
Yeah. El Perro was the star of Wander.
I guess the motto would be, so El Perro's from Mexico City, and he's a Slumdog Millionaire, but he also believes so much in his heart in the indie scene. He became a lead actor in this movie just by sheer, belief. But I would say, to all the young filmmakers out there are so many new and affordable options to shoot and be creative every day. So I would implore you, and I the best thing to do is get your hands dirty. Start creating a project, whatever it might be. Let your voice sing. Grab your phone, grab whatever camera you can grab, whatever, crew you can muster up, your parents, your grandmother, your sisters, your siblings, some cowboys from the corner of the street, and your best friends, and even your dog. I would say put them all together and start making something to motivate people or shed light during these times. Tell your story, find your voice, and be proud of your voice, and don't shy away, because everybody is just so unique and so special, and the world would love to see you shine. So that's my biggest advice, is create something every day, whether that's writing, taking a photograph, or filming something, or falling in love. Whatever it is, be creative and follow your heart.
None of us are going to be able to top that. So that's
Wow. Well, listen, a giant thank you. You are the most delightful people, and I just want to see Wander expand, and just I want everybody to see it. And you guys deserve it. What a lovely bunch of beautiful, inspiring people. Thank you so much for being here with us.
For having us.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for setting this up, because you gave us all an opportunity to see each other again. So
Yeah, no
we
doubt.
appreciate you guys big time.